So understanding that you're perceiving some potential conflicts within a character and the different things he's looking at, just how historically accurate is the play?
Well, you know, clearly there are things that a historian would say that didn't happen. For example, I suggest in the play that Felix Mendelssohn conducted the premiere of the violin concerto. Actually, he was supposed to conduct it, but he got sick, and it was conducted by another composer named Niels Gade. I also suggested that I think I made Joseph Mendelssohn more observant a Jew than he really was. And I did that on purpose because he was one of 10. Of those 10, 6 survived to adulthood. And of those 6, 2 remained Jewish, including Joseph and a sister. And Abraham, his brother and partner in the bank, was converted out. And so I felt it was important to show Joseph as the sort of the stronghold member of the family who remained Jewish, to sort of vindicate that viewpoint, that was a legitimate viewpoint, that the Judaism that had been handed down to him by his father, the eminent philosopher Moses Mendelssohn, who, while he allowed for some change and for secular education and stuff like that, Moses Mendelssohn observed all of the mitzvahs punctiliously through his life, while ascending to very, very high Enlightenment circles in Germany. But his son, Joseph, I wanted to make sure was portrayed as a very conventional and observant Jew. And maybe he was not quite so conventional. I was told this by a scholar in Germany. But on the whole, I would have to say that the play is historically accurate from the point of view that the changes in society were indeed happening. The reform movement definitely happened. The people I write about all were historical personages. The creation of the violin concerto happened the way I said it did. And I hope that in making the changes that I felt I had to make compared to the historical record, that it was for the purpose of a dramatic presentation, so that people could see it being acted out instead of the experience they would have reading a historical recitation. Now, I will say that in order to make sure we have an honest record, we're also bringing in a scholar of the period to give a talk in October before the play, so that, if I'm stretching anything a little too far, I'll get caught.
Well, it seems that based on what you just said, that is that the reason you picked Joseph Mendelssohn as the central character instead of his more famous father or the progeny of the family, Felix?
You need to have a central focal point, and Joseph was definitely a macher in the community. He was a very, very successful and wealthy businessman. He was the sort of person who the traditional congregation wanted him to affirm that he is having nothing to do with reform, and he will continue to pray in the Orthodox shul, and the reformers want him to bless what they're doing. And as far as Felix is concerned, Felix's father, Abraham, didn't live that much longer after he left the bank. So Joseph became kind of a father figure, or at least, if not a father figure, a confidant that Felix Mendelssohn would go and visit sometimes. So Joseph fulfilled all those roles, and being the one of 2 of Moses Mendelssohn's children who remained Jewish, I felt he would be the best way to tell the story would be through him as the central character.
Now, certainly, you've been doing plays every other year, and originally you called us together to take a look at your play and do a reading in January of 2020 with plans to present it in November. What was it like not to have a play in 2020?
Well, the pandemic gave us no choice, of course, and, you know, to the extent that we can now present the play in 2021 as part of kind of a reopening of the community, reopening of synagogues, reopening of synagogue life, I just have to accept the fact that we couldn't do it in the last year. There was a certain, I tried not to allow there to be any lost time. I went ahead and started researching and writing the play after next, so that you know, I would still be, the Emmanuel players would still be active, but not on stage. But it was different, that's for sure.
Now, do you see parallels between the Berlin Jews of the early 1800s and American Jews today?
Well, I think the major parallel is that, parallels are that both periods were times of change for the Jewish religion and for Jewish people. The times asked Jewish people to actively consider their attachment to Judaism, what it means to them, their affiliations, but the other thing is that the Jewish soul has not changed. The claims of the Jewish soul on the Jew have not changed. That is another thing that is very similar to then and now. Even though we face perhaps somewhat different situations, we still have this basic need to determine where we are on the Jewish scale. One thing that's different, though, is we now have a third way, a middle way, between Orthodoxy and Reform, which is the conservative movement that Emmanuel is proudly a part of. And the conservative movement navigates between tradition and change. We're very wedded to tradition, and we study the halakha, the Jewish law, but we're always trying to find ways to enable ourselves to bring it into the modern world. So that was an option not available to the people 200 years ago. They were groping towards it, and I think by the end of the play, Joseph feels they didn't quite strike the right balance, but that's an option we now have. But in many, many ways, I think that there are many parallels between the two eras.
Well, we certainly look forward to coming together and doing a reading. So Ben, thank you very much for writing another great play, for allowing me to play another great part. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
This is awkward. So I put some, just one thing I had a note, and we're gonna have to remember the name, Ferdinand David, but